Today I'd like to take some of your time, and I see Reece waving his arms in the air there before, so it's obviously the way that works. Take some of your time just to give you a big picture overview of the RCS, where it began, where it is now, and where we're going in the future. Yesterday when I was driving across to Timaru, I was thinking about the conference theme and staying ahead of the game, and I thought it's a really good theme because it allows us all to focus on the entire industry and where we're going and the game, to focus on the games. But then I started thinking about where we are with Velvet and the NVSB, and I'd argue strongly that we've been ahead of the game for 20 years or more in that regard. But it's not until something like the RCS comes along and it makes you realise that the game never ends. There's always something there that you've got to achieve, and it's how you deal with it. And the way to deal with it to stay ahead of the game is to encompass it, embrace it, work out what you need to do and get on and do it and then move on, and that keeps us ahead of the game. Most people will be aware that 12 months or so ago we did have that quite extensive audit from the Chinese officials, but probably not too many people realise we also underwent quite an extensive audit from MPI, internal audits, and they were right from top to bottom throughout the entire industry. And the outcome of both of those audits was that there needed to be a greater regulatory oversight of the harvesting of velvet, hence the RCS. I think it's important too to realise that that it's a government regulation put in by MPI. It's not something that was dreamt up by DINZ or the NVSB, but it's actually a law under the Animal Product Act. It's a regulation. I think at the time when those audits were undertaken and MPI came back and started to talk about going down the pathway trying to create a regulatory overview, that we were very fortunate to be able to work with people within MPI, people who understood the industry, understood what was required, and easy to talk to. And that gave us a bit of breathing space, in my view. It enabled us to get out to give the message across to farmers, velveters, veterinarians, as it was all evolving, on what we thought might be going to transpire. At that stage, nobody actually knew. Nothing was set in stone. So we tried to get as much coverage as possible through our online forums, through industry publications, flyers, question and answer sheets that we sent out to everybody. The DFA, Farmers Association, were absolutely great in those early days, organising shed meetings, field days. DINZ executive, NVSB committee members, the NVSB auditors were all invited along to talk to the gatherings. They were very, very well attended. I think from memory there was in excess of 700 people turned up at those field days across the countryside. So yeah, well attended. And it would also be fair to say that right from the get-go there was quite some resistance. Not everybody was happy. And let's be fair, we were all flying by the seat of our pants in those early days because, as I said, we didn't actually know what was going to be set in stone, even though we were able to negotiate quite a decent pathway with MPI. So there was some resistance, there was a bit of angst, there were one or two unnecessary abusive phone calls, and like I say, not everybody was happy, and there's probably still not everybody happy at this point in time. So the RCS was actually published. It came into force on the 7th of August last year, and the important part about that is who should read it or who should understand it. And it said it should be read by any person who harvests, stores, handles or transports velvet before it's received by an RMP, Risk Management Plan operator. Another bit there about the legalese side of it that none of us like. So the main crux of the RCS are about the requirements in the shed itself and around the velvet, with hygiene requirements, clean zones. I'm sure everybody's read and heard about them. Cold chain management, freezers able to go down to a certain temperature, velvet-only freezers and so on. But let me say, I believe it's entry-level stuff as far as the Animal Products Act is concerned and export of product. You compare that with, say, venison processors and the hoops that they have to jump through as far as getting their product signed off and into the marketplace compared with these, what I call entry-level standards. So I think we're quite fortunate in that regard. And just while I'm on that as well, when the auditors come to do an audit on your shed, it's actually up to you guys as farmers to be able to demonstrate to the auditor how your shed or how you go about meeting those requirements. It's not up to the auditor to come along in an advisory role and say, hey, you need to do this and need to do that, which is probably what happened in this last year that's just gone by. And I accept that because everyone was starting from virtually ground zero. But that's what will happen in the future. So while all this was going on, negotiating between MPI and trying to get the message out to farmers and veterinarians and so on, time was moving on. And like I said, the RCS was actually published on the 4th and came into play on the 7th of August. So we were right, and in fact, some farms were actually velveting at that point in time. So we were talking to MPI and saying, hey guys, you know, there's no way in the world that we're going to be able to get everybody to comply with this RCS these requirements. You know, we started to velvet, and MPI actually agreed, and so they said, okay, we'll give you a soft landing for 1 year. And then straight away I was hearing rumours around the industry, hey, we've got 3 years grace, but no, we haven't. We only had 1 year to be able to get the message out there and try and get everyone up to speed and understand what they had to do. And the idea was that if everybody made an honest effort at trying to meet those requirements, then that was fine and we could carry on. So that allowed the season to function without any oversight from MPI at all. It allowed farmers to carry on velveting, to sign their VSTs and still sell. And it gave everyone the chance to make that start that we talked about and we asked for. So I think it was a great gesture on behalf of MPI. So the current situation, we're 1 year into working under the regulations, and our current data that we've had back from all the audits that were conducted shows us that most have really embraced the requirements and really done it very, very well. It wasn't easy in the beginning for some, and I accept that some people have actually gone out and rebuilt sheds at great cost. Others have spent quite a bit of money making alterations to their sheds, but there are also some out there that never had to spend anything because their sheds actually met those requirements straight up. So yeah, big changes across the sector, and farmers need to be congratulated on the way that they've taken to the task and for what they've done. And Reece mentioned that story, I'd not heard it before, really good. And I hear stories coming back quite regularly from farmers along the lines of, Jesus, why didn't we do this years ago? Or I didn't realise how good it made me feel. I've painted the clean zones and it looks so good that I've carried on through the rest of the shed and done that. And one farmer telling me a week or so ago that he even claimed that his deer acted better in the shed once he painted it than what they were previously. So, you know, and I can kind of understand that as well. But obviously people are proud of what they've done, and you're congratulated for doing that as well. We've got a whole series of photos up on our database, on DINZ database, showing various options, various situations, different pens, and take the time to have a look at them. There's quite a number of them there, but just here's a typical old shed. I know this one was built in early 1980, and the interior of the shed, you can see on the left-hand side, that was what the whole shed was like, and the farmer had just put his first coat of paint on the walls leading down into the clean zone area within the shed, He's since put another coat of paint on that, but he's quite proud of what he's achieved. And we've gone from situations and conditions such as that to this type of thing. So a huge transformation in some of the sheds, and like I said, farmers need to be congratulated on the way that they've gone about it. And that's just another photo that shows a clean zone shed that uses that new material, which seems to be working out quite well. So this current season just passed, we actually allocated 300 audits. 163 of those sheds were signed off as being compliant and meeting all of those requirements. 123 sheds still to be completed, and there were 14 others, some where the farmers had declined to have an audit, and a couple of farms that were actually sold that we didn't know about. So the 163 sheds still to be completed within the agreed time frames or timelines that the auditors and the farmers agreed that the work would be done and would be completed. Now, some of that work wasn't probably due to start until after the end of the velvet season. It may have been a case where it was agreed that there needed to be a concrete floor or a washable floor underneath the crush, and obviously they weren't going to stop velveting for the season, so the auditor obviously agreed and put a timeline in place. So 163 of those still to be completed. We've got a record of those completion dates when the farmers had signed off on and so what the NVSB will do is send reminder letters out when those dates become due, so that we can get all of those sheds signed off before, at least before the end of the year. And we'll also give those who didn't want to have an audit initially, the 8 or 10 farmers, another chance before the season ends, and I'll explain why in a little while. One thing to be aware of is that MPI will be active in verification of the RCS. There's no doubt about that. I don't expect they'll be racing out straight away next season or anything like that, but they have the overarching verification powers, and they will look at the RCS program. This coming season we'll select another 300 or 300 plus sheds for audit, and we'll endeavour to try and get those completed prior to the main velvet season, but that's going to be dependent really on the between the farmer and the auditor himself, but that's the intent anyway. And the expectation is that more sheds will be compliant this coming season than what there was last season, because everyone's had that year to get their heads around what the requirements are. They are all set in stone there now, and there's been lots of forums where the RCS and changes to sheds and so forth have been discussed. So we expect that there will be more sheds that meet that requirement straight off in the audit, rather than have non-compliances or re-audits. So the system will work exactly the same as last year, provided you've made changes, but even if you still haven't had the official audit, you're still able to sign your VSTs and still able to sell your velvet this coming season. If you've not bothered to do anything, or you don't intend to do anything, that's fine, that's your prerogative. But I just hasten to warn, just be careful about signing VSTs, because it's a legal document, and falsifying a legal document under the Animal Products Act can get you into a bit of trouble. MPI will certainly be checking traceability backwards from the RMP premises, and they'll do that by picking up the VST from the buyer and going back through and possibly finishing up on the farm of origin to check out. Talking about the VSTs, a couple of responsibilities about those. The farmer or velveter has that legal responsibility to sign off the VSTs that the velveters come from sheds that meet the requirements. But also important to have the velvet ID tag numbers included on the VST. Doesn't necessarily have to be the individual tag numbers, but the batch number would be fine, so that's the top and bottom number of the tags that the veterinarian has allocated to you. The velvet buyer also has a responsibility to ensure that the VST is filled out correctly, and from next season on, the velvet buyer will have a different or a separate VST themselves when they on-carry velvet consignments. So all velvet removed on farms, no matter whether it's part of the NVSB or removed by individual veterinarians, must meet the requirements of the RCS to be eligible for sale to an RMP operator. And all known deer farmers outside of the NVSB will be offered an audit of their premises. And to give you an idea, we asked all the veterinarians and vet clinics last season to forward us the names of farms where they went out and velveted deer, and we received exactly 100 names. I mean, we knew the farms existed, we knew the farmers, but we didn't know that velvet was being removed on those properties. So all of those people will be offered an audit at some stage, either next year, this season, or the following season. As well as that, MPI are kind of partnering with us and also spreading that word out to veterinary clinics or veterinarians, and they've told us that they'll do that through the Veterinary Association, so that's quite good as well. So the NVSB will give every one of those 300 or 300 plus sheds that's selected for audit this coming season the opportunity to become compliant within that 1 year time frame. If there's any non-compliances, there'll be an agreed time frame, and those agreed time frames will be signed off before that year is out. Any premises that are still non-compliant after that year or after that audit period, or anyone that doesn't want to be part of it, like I said, that's your prerogative. Those names will go on to what's termed as a non-compliant list. An MPI, actually it is an MPI list, and an MPI have said that they will actually share that list in the future with velvet buyers to make sure that everything is done correctly back through the chain. So the point I'm trying to make there is that anyone that goes outside the audit period, the 12-month period, where they've had that official audit and either don't want to be part of it or haven't completed, once they want to come back on, or if they want to come back in at a later date, it'll be on a user pays basis. Okay. The MPI have indicated that they'll check non-compliant premises starting this coming season. Now, I'm not quite sure, they haven't told me that they've got a plan or anything like that, so I'm not quite sure how that is going to work, but they've also indicated that, that some of their audits are likely to be on a cost recovery basis, and again, I don't know what that means or what sort of value that they're looking at, but we need to be aware that, that this may well happen. And from my perspective, I don't really want to see anyone on that non-compliant list. I'd like to see everyone as part of it. So to be fair, that we've all still got that challenge in front of us at the moment. So let's continue to stay ahead of the game if we can. And just to finish up, I picked up a quote just the other day that I thought was quite apt to the RCS and velveting and what we're doing at the moment, trying to get on top of it. And it's coming together as a beginning, keeping together as progress, and working together as success.